feminist once said that life is not a competition between men and women. It's a collaboration. It's indeed quite true, because it's the men in power that can change the narrative and ensure that they bring in more women to do just that. In acknowledging the power of men in gender equality, Mwananchi Communications Limited, under its business flagship, The Citizen, is bringing to you the Citizen Rising Woman Initiative 2022 with the aim to empower and inspire women leaders in our society, as well as highlight those men that pioneer gender equality in our society. Today, I'm with one of a notable man, quite astonishing and impressive CV. He has been on different boards, many different leadership positions, and currently he is the Regional Director for Eastern Central Africa of Trademark East Africa, and his name is Mr. John Ulanga. Welcome.
Asante, thanks a lot. Thank you very
much. I am quite honored to have this interview with you.
My pleasure.
What you do is quite impressive. You have been on very different leadership positions so far. You've sat on different boards, more than 22 actually, and that's quite impressive. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So everybody, behind every strong person, they say there is a huge story. What is your personal story? What can you tell us about yourself?
That could be a long story, but let me cut it short. I'm coming from a very humble beginning, born to parents that were public servants, just middle-level public servants. Went throughout public schools, never went into any private school. But of course, by the time we were going to school, it was fashionable to succeed and go into public school. So that's what I did. But looking back into my story, it was a story about determination. It's a story about wanting to succeed. It's a story about every day waking up and say, can I be a better version of myself? You see. So throughout my schooling, I did my primary school in Dar, did my secondary school in Dar, Tanzania Secondary School, and currently I'm actually the chair of the board of Tanzania Secondary School. I went to Mazengo High School here in Dodoma, and then I went to University of Dar es Salaam, where I did a bachelor's degree in commerce, biasing in accounting. And then I started working. I've worked for public sector, worked for private sector, worked for not-for-profit, but in everywhere that I have been, and still where I am, I'm trying to be a better version of myself every day, and it's about hard work.
This thirst to reach somewhere, this drive to be somewhere, because looking at your education, you said you just studied in public schools, and in your O-level, A-level, you graduated with honors, you know. In university as well, you know, your CPA, you graduated with honors as well. So this is determination. Does this determination have a source? Where is this thirst coming from?
I think twofold. One, parents play a big role in terms of, I remember going back home when you're in primary school and you're number 2 or number 3 and you're showing your report, school reports, very proud, and our dad would look at the report and say, but why did you get a 65? Why not a 95? And you know what, at that stage you feel like you're being unfair. I'm actually number 2, I'm actually number 3. But yes, you're number 2, you're number 3 amongst what type of people, you see? So that realization that, when you're saying you're doing the best, don't compare with others, compare with yourself and say, have I been the best version of myself? So that's one. But number 2, the urge to change the environment you are in, you see. And I'm being a bit controversial when I say this, but there is more likelihood if you're not coming from a very well-to-do family or society, there's more likelihood to put a lot of effort to change that environment, you see. And I think from observation, I've seen quite a lot of that, okay, you might not get there. I'm not saying I am there, but it's a journey that you traverse, you see. So you get that dissatisfaction of saying, I think we could do better, or I could do better. And both angles, the push you get from your parents and your view and perspective of the environment and the urge to say, I think I want to do better than now, it gives you a lot of energy to push it every day.
Now, looking to where you are today, you've quite achieved a lot of things. You've accomplished so much. I believe you believe maybe there is still so much more to do despite what you have achieved. But then looking back, do you think you always knew where you wanted to be, or is it just by pure luck? You're like, let me just do my best, whatever happens, happens.
There's part of what you've just said. Let me just do my best. But always, and I remember I learned this from, by then I thought he was an old man, but I don't think he was as old as I thought. When I was in primary school, our dad's friend by the name of Dr. Sherry Taki, he's now deceased, so the late Dr. Sherry Taki, came and was asking us, so what do you want to do, you know, with those childhood dreams? And he told me a statement that I've always remembered. He said, a bad soldier is the one who does not aspire to become a general. That if you join the army, you should always aspire to become the topmost rank in the army, which is the general. You see, so always I've lived to try to think of that, of saying, okay, am I aspiring to become the general? If you aspire to become the general, you might not be a full a 5-star, 4-star general, but at least you might not be a full general, but you can be at least a major general, you can be a brigadier general. And that has been my journey, that always aspiring to become the general. Am I yet already the general? No, not anywhere there. But at least I think I am much better than those don't aspire. If you don't aspire to become the general, you're likely to just die a private. Yeah.
So let's talk about the push that you have had with different people. You know, you had yourself, you had your parents that wanted you to do better. Do you feel like the society also keeps the same pressure or the same trying to empower a girl child or a woman since she's young and tell them, you know, you can be the president, you know? In our society, especially like ours, Africans, Tanzanians, most of the time they will tell the lady, you should aspire to be a wife, aspire to, you know, to some of the jobs that mostly, you know, we have these roles that we believe men can be, you know, CFOs or CEOs, and females should be HRs and stuff. How do you feel that affects women?
First, let me start from my personal perspective. I come from a family of 3. I have a twin brother and a sister. In our upbringing, there was no significant difference of saying, don't do this, it's only reserved for a woman, or don't do this, it's only reserved for a man, you see. It has helped both of us, I mean, all of us. It has helped the male siblings, and it has helped the female sibling. I appreciate the roles done by women. I learned cooking in my younger days, so much so, such that I could cook for the family in my secondary school. But what does it do? It gives you an appreciation of what it takes to be in charge of the kitchen, what it takes to be in charge of cleaning the house, what it takes to be. It means you really appreciate. But it also gives you that perspective that actually in undertaking these roles, there's no significant difference, you see. So it gives you this lens when you're looking at things. You see, you're looking at what is inside the brain, inside the head, which is the brain, and not what is outside in the physical and maybe the emotional being. Now, back to your question, it is true. Society, from our culture, from religion, from different perspectives, there is that a demarcation of the roles for women roles. So if you're doing these roles, you're perceived to be more of female-like, or if you're doing these roles, you're perceived to be more male-like. But statistics have shown, and this is the conversation that I want us to be having a lot more now. Studies have shown that countries that are more gender equal perform better in GDP per capita that grow over time. So at economic development level, countries that are more gender equal perform better in terms of GDP per capita. So there is an economic case for that. But from business perspective, from companies, for example, studies, there's a study I think was done by Harvard University that also shows that companies that are at the top 25% of gender equality, that they are the best in terms of gender equality or gender equity, they are 27% more likely to outperform other companies in terms of profitability. That means they are more profitable by their likelihood of becoming more profitable. These are other companies are like 27% more. So there is even also a business case for gender equity and the discussions around gender equality. So yes, much as historical, there is that demarcation, that dichotomy of saying men and women roles, etc., but there is increasing business case that shows that gender equality is not about taking power off men and giving it to women. It's about ensuring the country becomes more likely to experience higher rates of GDP per capita growth. At company level, it is actually about discussing how we can create more gender equal companies for increased profitability. And that has been proven.
Yeah, with having that knowledge in mind, we have a business case, we have an economic case that both support, gender equality in our companies. Why do you think that we are still lagging behind in that sector? Example, if you look at let's say the financial sector, just look at the CEOs and CFOs, the top management roles. I think in Tanzania, in the financial sector, maybe in the banks, maybe in insurance, we probably have maybe not more than 3 females at the top. Why are we still lagging behind while we have proven cases that show that bringing in more women at the top is actually beneficial?
I think there are a couple of reasons. One, there is no enough cross-gender conversations, no enough conversations between men and women on what can we do collectively to support growth of more and more women. Unfortunately, and I usually challenge this, when it comes to International Women's Day or such other, it becomes a women's talk. Yeah. You see lots of women talking amongst themselves, beating up their chests, etc. But I think going forward, it should be an opportunity to say, as an International Women's Day, with an aim of attaining gender equity, what can men and women do together to support growth of women in organizations? I'll give you a typical example. Currently, and I hope I'm not wrong, I am sure I am not wrong. If you look at the UN agencies, I think they have the most number of women at the top level of the UN agencies. But who has been the greatest supporter for the growth of those women? Who has been at the top of the UN in terms of who is the Secretary General of the United Nations? It's not a woman, it's a man. So it means once, and even, whenever there is that perception or situation where one group of society is more powerful and the other group of society is less powerful, solution always comes up when some people from the more powerful group appreciates the value and the role of the less powerful, and they bring them up. You see? So even in this, I think number one reason there has to be that, but number two, I don't think we have a strategy as a country. I don't think we have we should have, say, a 5-year strategy of saying what investments in human capital do we need to do now over the next 5 to 10 years to increase the number of women who are eligible to become CEOs, to become board chairs, or to become, I know, for example, Association of Tanzania Employers, ATE, has a female future program. I think it's excellent. It's preparing people for, women to become board members. But I think we need more of those programs to prepare women to become CEOs, heads of organizations, or members of the management. So I don't think we have enough and comprehensive strategies to support growth of women. Number 3, and this is controversial. Our cultures from all fronts of cultures, needs to graduate with the current reality. Our cultures need to graduate with the current reality. Cultures need to appreciate the role of women and need to allow women to be the best they could be. You see? And that perception of when a woman goes out there, does the best they could do, that perception that they're being unwomen, if there's if there's that language. So we also need to work on the culture, and that's a long-term investment. It's not something that we can do in a year or two. Yeah.
Well, as you said, when a woman is trying to be out there, they'll call you aggressive, intimidating, she's coming off strong, she's not supposed to do this. But then now, let's talk about people now, in the conversations about empowering a woman. It's there, it's been there for a while now, but we are leaving the boy child behind. We are having now tables where there are men and women, even if they're not enough. Maybe you can find in a board, maybe there is even one female representation there. But then if we are not preparing the men to live with empowered women, we are preparing women to be empowered. How is that going to affect us in the long run? And why is it important now to bring those conversations, as you said, bring a man and a woman together, then make sure that they're moving along the same way?
You're absolutely right. And I think we have a reason to be seen as we are leaving the boy child behind. But the reason I was saying these conversations need to be cross-gender conversations. It means if we are having cross-gender conversations, the discussions will be, what can we do now to create a more equal society in the future, where men and women are treated based on what they bring on the table, as opposed to their gender. You see? So once we have that type of conversation, it means we'll not only be talking about a girl child, we'll also be talking about a boy child. You see? It won't be conversation about men and women, and we only talk about what do we need to do about women. You see? But let me bring a different perspective, and I will challenge you to go and look at the data. If you look at the latest population statistics that I have seen, and if I am not wrong from what I have seen, we always say percentage of women is more than percentage of men in the country. But if you look at that statistics, children aged 15 years and below, there's actually more boy children than girl children. So it means if that trend continues in the next 20 to 30 years, if that trend continues, we'll have a country where we will have actually majority men than women. Now, if that happens while women have not yet been empowered, we'll have a group of women, we'll have the women being minority and highly disempowered. It's going to be double jeopardy. You know what I mean? So let's look at, so when we have these conversations, we can also look at the data and say, what does the data tell us? And what can we prepare the next generation in a way that the numbers won't matter, but it's about the framework for equality and getting the best out of each gender.
Well, I'll go to look at the numbers, but speaking by experience, I think even in the last years, I've had maybe 6 or 7 friends give birth, And I'll tell you, out of them, only one was a baby girl and all were boys. So I could believe, yes, that could be true. So since we're talking about personal experiences, can you tell me what is your experience when it comes to working now with women at the top?
So I think I've worked with women throughout my career. But so, for example, I've worked with women who are now very powerful at the level of ministers, as I've shown you around here. And looking at their success now, the likes of Minister Honorable Umi Mwalimu, I worked with her many years ago. The likes of Honorable Dr. Stagomena Tax, I worked with her close to 20 years ago. You saw that urge to succeed even then. And there was an environment that allowed them to succeed and get the best out of themselves and give it to us around them. So you first realize that once the environment is conducive, once the environment is not putting a cap on the growth of women, they can be who they can be. Number one. Number two, if you look at my journey into the corporate sector, I would not have gone into the corporate boards I am into if it was not without the role of one woman. And I'm sure she's not, and I know she's responsible for the success of many women, but also responsible for success of many men. Identifying potentials regardless of their gender. And this is none other than I will forever be grateful for Madam Zuhura Muro, who was, of course, once also the board chair of Mwananchi Communications, and she's the one who actually recruited me into the board of Mwananchi Communications. She was once also the board chair of KCB Bank in Tanzania, and she actually recruited me into the board of KCB Bank, which I'm currently chairing. But she has done that for many women and men. So you realize that, that motherly attitude of a woman to nurture the younger ones, whether they are your children, your siblings, but nurturing them. You see that coming into play even in the corporate world, where they look at cross-intergenerational type of sustainability, continuity, and they nurture that. So I think we should also appreciate and admit that we are missing a lot of that nurturing motherly attitude from women when they're at the top.
Speaking about that, you proved the statement that they say when you empower a woman, you empower entire society. Well, behind me, there are a couple of awards that you have been given. And one of them that I saw there is responsible for women, women empowerment, one that is just right behind me. So to conclude our interview, can you give us your personal story, your personal experience about how you now as a person have tried to bring in more women in the works that you do?
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. There's a lot that I'm doing. Of course, the award you've talked about, or the symbol of appreciation, and there is one or two, but probably there's a few. There are a few others. I believe that success, genuine success, is also about sharing what you know and what you have, making a positive impact to other people, men and women. It could be as individuals, it could be as groups. So yes, I've spoken on quite a number of women empowerment forum or conversations, trying to encourage more and more women, because there's an aspect that we probably don't talk loud enough, is also to instill a lot more confidence amongst women. Because society has created this perspective that they should not be out there. Yeah. You see, they're of less capacity. So when you have that messaging from your upbringing, it almost frames your mind. You see that you are probably a lesser human being. I'm sorry if that doesn't come out well, but that So those type of conversations is to share experiences and say, the fears you have as women are the fears I do have, or we do have as men. So as men. So I've had quite a lot, but I also mentor men and women quite a lot. And I have seen success. Those that are in corporate, those that are in private sector, private business. There's a lady, for example, I'm mentoring amongst others. She's running her own business. And over the last 2 years, where we have been having a 2-hour session every month for 2 years, her business has grown four times. 4 times. No additional capital, nothing magical, but those conversations of addressing the bottlenecks. And some of those conversations were about just telling her that you are actually much better than many of the men that you are meeting around. And her business has actually grown 4 times. Wow. And when I'm saying 4 times, it has grown big. You see? So yes, I spend time to provide that mentorship, coaching, advice, challenge to men and women equally, because I believe in the contribution of each one of us in our economy, but also in business growth.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Ulanga, for this wonderful interview. I personally have been inspired to do more, to be more, but most importantly, to look within myself and make myself as the competition between myself today and myself tomorrow, and see my potential with what I could be. So thank you so much for sitting with us today.
It has been my pleasure. Asante sana.
Thank you. Well, this is a vivid example of how it is important to bring in men into these conversations in order to be able to bring that equality. Let's hear the men and hear the women, bring them together in one table and make sure that we're going to one place. My name is Letrucia Pamba and I was the host of today. Our guest was Mr. John Ulanga, and let's meet next time.